How's it going, everyone? All right, so we're back again. We got another producer's log. It is Monday, as always. First Monday in July, actually. Welcome to July. Happy 4th of July. Happy Canada Day to everyone. Oh, Ashley's here with water and coffee. We're getting all prepared. I'm a little behind the ball today, but we got a lot to talk about. So I had to get up some examples. I had to get up all kinds of content. Hi, Ashley. So today we're going to be, oh, God, coffee. Love coffee. So I'm going to be getting the Instagram chat up in a second here. But we have quite a bit to chat about. So the first thing on the list is going to be talking about, I mean, obviously we're going to go through our questions. That's our standard operating procedure. But we have developing new styles, using tech, and advanced editing. Those are going to be our topics, all under the umbrella of innovating as a photographer. This last episode is going to be all about those final steps to really make you stand out as a photographer, the things that you can do moving forward, and those kind of constant learning ideas. So definitely stick around for that part. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to get the Instagram video going up right now. We do live streams on Instagram, but we also go out to Facebook and YouTube and a couple of Facebook pages, actually. Let's see. We have currently, we're going to be going up on, we have UXL's Facebook account, UXL's YouTube account, also Full Coverage Media Group, which is my company on Facebook, and Twitch, FCMG_producers log. So you can find us in all those different places, and if you comment on those videos, then you'll be able to chat in, and we'll see your comments pop up right here. But we're going to hop into Instagram, which doesn't actually show up in the live comments here, but we can indeed see those questions and hopefully get people to hop in and chat with us. So I'm gonna get the feed kind of running here. I always forget that I have to add the title first. Here we go. FCMG. In the meantime, as people filter in, I would love to hear what the last episode that you watched was. The last episode of the Producer's Log, what kind of content you were asking about, any questions that you had. If you have any questions from the last streams, definitely ask them here. I'm happy to answer those, and I'll be going through those in this episode today. I'll be starting with the pre-roll student questions, moving through any questions that come up in the chat as they show up, and then we'll be moving on to those how to be a better photographer tips. Let's see. Producers. Long. Producers. Log. All right. AMA. Workstream. It's important to have all your stuff branded, accordingly. Workstream with FCMG_stay. That's me. Here we go. Hopefully everyone had a good holiday weekend. How to be a better photographer. Sweet. Add title. Awesome. That's what I needed. Now we can get moving on this stuff. Alrighty. I'm actually going to use this. I'm going to back that up a little bit. There we go. Much better shot. Okay, so let's go live on Instagram. Let's chat with everyone. Let's see how everybody's doing. Yeah. Alrighty. I feel like this camera could come up just a little bit. Right? Yeah, okay, sure. Good enough. Cool. Alright, let's get this ball rolling. How's it going, Instagram? We're here with another episode of the FCMG Producers Log, sponsored by UXL. Thank you for joining us. We've got a bunch to talk about today. The people from Facebook and YouTube have already joined us. They're waiting in the chats patiently. We're going to be going on and answering some questions from the UXL students in the pre-registration questions. But then we're going to go on and we're going to talk about innovating as a photographer. We're going to talk about developing new styles, using new technology, and advanced editing techniques. I'm going to talk about some personal experiences, where my kind of career went, and some kind of ways that I wish I would have gone with things, aspirations, all kinds of stuff like that. So if you're a photographer or if you're any type of media producer, this might be a helpful chat for you. So definitely stick around. And if you want to get into the chats as well and ask questions, go over to Facebook for UXL or Full Coverage Media Group, which is my company, and join us in the chats there. Or you can go over to YouTube and watch UXL's channel. We're streaming live there right now as well. So definitely check those out. Ask some questions, and we'll be answering them over in the chat bar right here. You can't see them on Instagram, but they're there, I promise. Okay, so as always, these episodes are sponsored by UXL. This video is sponsored by UXL Career and Learning Network. Are you interested in learning a new skill? UXL is a leading provider in online training. They host courses from top-rated instructors from across the globe. Find courses on just about any subject and join a community of over 500,000 passionate learners. Visit uxl.com and register today. These episodes are obviously sponsored by UXL. They've been kind enough to send these out to their students. Also let us stream on their Instagram channel, which is super cool. I've been able to kind of take over their live stream every Monday, and it's been a lot of fun. We've gotten some great questions in the chats, and UXL students actually get the opportunity to pre-register with their questions and ask things ahead of time, so you can get your questions in early. I can kind of get a look at them and get some ideas about what I want to say to them. So it gives me a little chance to study up on your material and hopefully get you a better answer. But also, sometimes I just have answers to the questions, or I have at least my own personal experience that I can tell you about, or stories that I've heard from other people in the industry. Also, if you have heard anything, or if you know anything about the subject matter that we're talking about, we would love to hear about your expertise, your experience, your thoughts on these subjects as well. So feel free to chat in, give us your peace of mind, and we'd love to have you have your opinions in the chats and your anecdotal evidence. Okay, so let's get right into the action. First part of the thing, answering student questions. We had some great ones last week. We got a whole bunch that we needed to go through. Right now, we got about the same amount, so I'm excited. We got some time to go through these. We're looking good. We're looking good. Okay, so we have a question here from Alvia Davis. She asks, if I hire someone to take photos of me in my own studio, would I own the rights to this photo? How would that work? Thank you. So that really depends on how the contract is written up. If you don't have a contract, then there's kind of some squeak room. I'm not a legal advisor or anything like that, so don't take my advice in that sense. But you can take my anecdotal evidence, here as you will. When it comes to shoots like that, I've always gone off the premise of whoever takes the photo has the rights to use it, either in marketing for their company, in like example material, portfolio, things like that. But as soon as it comes time to sell the image, like if you're using someone's image and you don't have a contract with them, and you're about to sell it to a company and they want to pay you money to use that image, then what I would personally do was get in contact with the model, talk to them, and be like, hey, listen, this company wants to get in here, and offer them a significant chunk of the money. Be like, hey, we worked on this together, let's do 50-50. Or, hey, like, you came in this concept, but they want to use your image. I was doing a whole round of like a bunch of different people, and you were one of the people that were there. They like that image. How do you feel about, this much? And maybe negotiate with them a little bit. But you can avoid all of that by simply having written in your contract in the beginning an actual image release. So if you use image release forms, then you're going to have the rights to use those images that are taken in your studio. But if someone else comes in and takes photos of you, then I would say if they don't have a contract, they have the usage rights of that image. They were the one that created the actual image, even if you were the one, who kind of set things up and whatnot. Unless they're literally just pressing the button, if you have all of your stuff in order, then I would say that's your right. But the contract is what really clears that up. So I would either get in touch with that person and try and do a contract after the fact, or do some sort of like check out your actual legal rights and whatnot. Here we go. Alexa, we got a comment here. I'm gonna pull this up here. I just realized my chats aren't popping up there. So let's pull this up the right way. Okay, here we go. Pop this over here. I gotta open up Restream. But Eliza Kolvik says, if taking the photo for a studio, I think studio will own the rights. Same like a wedding. If you take wedding photos, you must ask permission to use those images in a portfolio or online. Exactly. Thought I am not a legal not a legal expert. Okay. So that's exactly right. If you're working for another company, they own the rights. They typically have a contract with you that you've already signed, that says, like, hey, I'm a contractor. I work for this company. Maybe the equipment is theirs too. There's typically like a liability form in there too. But if you're working for another company, yes, then they own the rights. If you're having, I think the question, like, here's Alvia Davis's question. If I hire someone to take photos of me in my own studio, would I own the rights? So they're hiring a photographer. They're coming into their studio. So maybe Alvia is going to set up her own lights. Maybe she has her own camera and everything like that. Maybe she just needs that person to come in and snap the actual photos, like needs someone behind the lens. She doesn't have like a tether system or anything like that. Although a lot of cameras do. So maybe she's having someone actually show up and just take photos of her in her own studio. In that case, that person taking the photos owns the rights. Unless there's some sort of contract between you saying that you own you're buying the rights to use these images as you please, or if there's an unspoken contract of just time for print, like you're going to give your time to be in the photos, they're going to be able to use them as example material, and you're going to get the use of those photos in return, then you guys get your stuff and you part ways. But unless there's some sort of prior agreement, especially if it's written in an email or something like that, it can definitely get complex. James Bass, yeah, absolutely, it can definitely get complex with copyrights. That's why using contracts and using model releases and like being clear and being upfront is so important. A lot of people ignore that, and honestly, I did that with photography for years, and that's why I started to realize, like, hold on, I've been ignoring usage rights and contracts, so I don't feel comfortable selling these images. I don't feel comfortable doing anything more than just posting these on my social media profiles and online, in the hopes to get more likes and activity on my pages. There were tons and tons of model shoots that I used to do where it was just like, all right, you know what, I've got a free weekend and I want to get something done. I want to do a photo set. I have a new light that I want to test out or something like that. So it was valuable for me at the time to do these things and to learn that craft. But at the same time, the rights to use those images are a little bit in question. So I've gone by the premise of, all right, here's the images to the model, and I'm going to put these up on my social media, and that's it. If they go out and they sell that to a company for $10,000, that's awesome. That's fantastic. I would love if they credited me, saying that I was the photographer. If they don't say that I was the photographer after someone asked them who the photographer was, that would be kind of shitty. But it happens, So basically, being clear about your rights is going to be a good investment of your time and effort. If you're going out and doing a photo shoot, you want to know if you have the ability to use those things in your marketing, or if you can actually even go out and sell them as stock photography. The more I think about it, the more I should have actually licensed those materials on stock sites and put them up as stock media for sale. That's one thing that I've always kind of regretted with my photography past, but this is a learning experience for all of us. We're all going through this course and kind of picking up new techniques and new new thoughts about how to monetize what we're doing and how to make it sustainable for us, or how to focus on the creative parts and kind of bypass the things that we don't really need to focus on as creative individuals. So it's uh it's definitely a nuanced topic. Copyright can be very difficult to navigate, but if you can get your contracts and your model release forms in order right away, then that's going to be the best thing to do, really. Speaking from experience as someone who ignored contracts for a long time. Actually, a little bit of story time. So I did one time there was a photo shoot that I did for someone, and it was for pay. So they paid me to do the photo shoot, but we didn't really have a written contract. So there wasn't any sort of like, oh hey, this person can use the images for whatever. Like, we didn't have it expressly stated. So when the person used the images for a contest without me really even, like, I knew that they were gonna go for a contest, but I didn't know that A, they were gonna have a really good chance at getting it, and B, they were going to like, there was a massive cash prize at the end, like, not massive, but uh, basically she submitted photos and she won, and I was like over the moon excited for her. And then I saw that like the prize money was $10,000. I go, oh crap, I think I did that photo shoot for like $50. Like, I was just trying to get another photo shoot in the doors, and it was one of those things where if I had some sort of contract that says, hey, if you earn a big payout from like a contest or something like that, then the photographer's in on 10% or something like that. Like, if there was some sort of like caveat for that in the contract, then maybe I would have been protected. But I literally didn't have any contract with her, so I just had to send a message and be like, hey, that's awesome, congratulations, and then hope for the best next time. So it was really cool. She got to shoot with a like a professional photographer that works on I think it was like works for, it was some big magazine, something like that. This is a long time ago, but it was like this torn situation where you're really excited for the person because they got what they wanted, but you're also like, oh shoot, I could have been included in that. Like, I could have had a win as well, So yeah, definitely do that copyright stuff in advance. And if you're gonna have someone come to your your studio and you're gonna pay them to do photos, I would say the usage rights are yours, but maybe get that contract just so that you can be clear with them about the way that you want to use it and the way that you want to portray the media. Like, if you're going to put it out as like, hey, this is an image in my studio with my equipment and all this stuff, and you're going to say this is an example of the stuff that you can do, but it's you in the image, it might be a little bit more expensive to be like, hey, you can't put your watermark on this or something like that. So just being clear about how you want to use it instead of having to do these things afterwards will make it much more a much easier process for you. All right, that was Alvia Davis's question. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. That was a good one. I've always struggled to kind of go through that copyright debate, so it's good to come back to it. I would love to hear anyone else's experiences with this stuff too. Oscar Wilson asks, can you recommend the best ways to light up reflective surfaces like cars and motorcycles? I want that showroom look without excessive reflection. Okay, well, the showroom look is kind of brought about by just having tons of light everywhere. Like, the way that they set those up is there's a lot of top light, there's a lot of backlighting behind things, because when a surface is reflective, the lighting will actually kind of wrap around it. So you can get I'm trying to see if I have something pretty reflective. Okay, that's clear. Anything super reflect, I have a mirror somewhere, but that's not really going to work for our purposes. Something like a chrome vase, or like a shiny black object of some sort, like a statue or something. If it's like shiny gloss black, will be very, very reflective. So there's a couple ways to go about it. There's the high key way, which is like putting up a lot of reflection and lighting around the sides. So all your lighting is coming in directly from the siding, from like a side angle. That way, you're not getting a huge reflection right on the front, which would obscure your view of the actual object, but you'll get, reflections around the side. It's a lot like a hair light. Like it'll help give you that 3D look, help make your subject kind of pop out on the background, especially if you're using like a black background or something like that. Those little white lines help delineate the edges of your object really, really well. Or you can go with like negative fill. So you can put a light over top of something like a black card. Like I had one around here the other day. I don't know what I did with it. But these chunks of foam core basically that are black paper on both sides. So they're very matte, they're non-reflective black material. You can also use like duvetine or velvet can sometimes work. Velvet can be a little bit reflective, but any sort of like matte or soft fuzzy black material will help absorb light. So you're not going to get the reflections that you would otherwise, and things that are around your studio or things that are behind you won't get reflected as readily, including your lights. So you can actually put like a light over top. You can put lights in between the slits of these cards that you're placing up to control your lighting. And in doing so, you can really control like where your reflections go. So if you have like a couple clamps or something like that can hold these things in place, you can really fine tune your setup and get some great shots of reflective things just by controlling the light and controlling that environment around there. One of the alternatives, like one of the things that I like to do is to say you're shooting like something clear, like oh yeah, there's the black chunk of stuff. It's right here. So say you want to shoot something like this. It's clear, it's reflective, it's got some reflective surfaces on there. If I had brighter lights going on right now or sharper lights, my lighting is very soft. It's in a soft box. That would be much more apparent. You can kind of see some of the reflections in the upper edge of the glass up here right now, but watch what happens when I put black behind it. All of a sudden, all the details of like the ice inside the glass and whatnot, obviously if I bring that further back, it's gonna be a little bit more diffused and we're not gonna see the details of the card as much. Using cameras that have nice shallow depth of field are also going to help with that effect, but it helps kind of take away all the distractions behind it, because you're seeing things through these objects, or you're seeing things in the reflections of these objects. So as soon as you start adding that black fill to control the light around something, like see there, I'm taking out that backlight. But here I have that backlight still, and I have the the back of the card behind it. So it stands out really, really nicely because I'm using those reflections in the right spots to sort of give it that three-dimensional effect, as well as control the light in the background and give it a high contrast background as well. That was handy. I needed a sip of water anyway. Oh, that's cold. Wow. All right, we're good. Awesome question. I'm really glad that we got to that one. I would love to do, like I should have done something during this course about reflective surfaces and how to photograph those things. There is that's a whole, class within and of itself. Maybe I'll do something on Instagram and post that up there. If you're interested, follow me on Instagram, FCMG_stay. That's where I'm going to be posting a whole lot of stuff. But I'm slowly kind of transitioning that account into my main account. So FC Media Group on Instagram. If you follow me there, that's where I'll be. Yeah. Hopefully I'll get some more stuff like that. Oh, apparently I'm not getting Steve's comments from Facebook. So I just got asked from Scott Westgate and Ashley Reinhardt. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go to Facebook and find the comment section there, because apparently that's not working right. So I have a couple Facebook, like the platform that I'm streaming through right now is Streamlabs, but I'm also using Restream, So Restream will connect to more platforms than I can connect Streamlabs to. So it's a little difficult to get all those things. Also, because Ashley just mentioned it's being hosted in a watch party, I might not be getting the ones that are in the actual watch party. But that's really cool. Actually, I'm going to go to your profile. I'm going to see if I can find that watch party and therefore find those, find those comments. All right. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Yeah, Steve, make sure you use a circular polarized filter. Yeah. Set your terms in your contract. Absolutely. Yeah, that was something that I used to or ignore really horribly and to much frustration in the future back in the day. So thank you, Steve. That's great advice. Steve Husted from KJAD is in the comments right now. He's in Ashley's watch party. So yeah, KJAD is a wedding company that I've been doing some work for. They're up in Wilkes-Barre, and they're definitely worth getting in contact with if you have any sort of like wedding scheduled for the foreseeable future, because things are kind of doing this weird shift where you can't really have 250 people in a venue all at the same time. So we're doing some interesting stuff there, and I would love to see some people over at Not Just Any Day. You can go to notjustanyday.com. You can find all their stuff there. And yeah, I'll hopefully be there more often too. Steve, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And he also says, and make sure you use a circular polarizer filter. Yes, circular polarizing filters will cut down on reflections on reflective surfaces. I was actually just using ones the other day. I did a live stream on the FCMG _stay Twitch channel. If you follow me there, I do weird random live streams, either gaming or adventures or who knows what. But I was off on an adventure. We were going kayaking. We did a live stream, and I was testing out circular polarizing filters on a drone. So I could put these little tiny filters on the front of this drone, fly it up in the air, and make sure that it was twisted in the right direction so that when I get that shot coming down in the water, the reflections aren't quite as crazy. Also, my the saturation of my colors is going to be much deeper. And it just really gives it this nice punch to the image. These were ND-PL filters, so they were also neutral density, and it helped me get the right exposure. So it's got some pretty interesting effects. I'm actually surprised at my thoughts on it, but I'll be doing a video on that soon. So if you're interested in like drone reviews and reviews and stuff like that, that content will be going up on YouTube and Facebook under Full Coverage Media Group. So hopefully I'll see you all there. All right, awesome. Let's get on to the next question here. We got some something over here in the UXL dashboard here. So Oscar Wilson, thank you for the question about reflective surfaces. That's a real cool question. Hopefully, circular polarizing filters, negative fill, and controlling where your lights and reflections are with that negative fill will help you out. All right, so Mia S has a question. Are there any services that will pair you up with a mentor for learning a new skill? I don't know. Not that I've heard of, but that's a really cool... Oh, that's a really cool option. I could see some learning platforms working in that same sort of way, but not necessarily that they're designed that way. Like, I could see, for instance, UXL, Lynda. There's a couple of other platforms that have like learning stuff like that, like Udemy. They all have this, you can sort of filter by instructor. So if you ever find an instructor that you really like, you can find other courses that they have hosted. For example, I'm going to be working on a course with UXL over the next, couple months. And it's going to be on photography. We're hopefully going to get into some other subject matters too, like videography, freelancing, starting your own business, things like that. Those courses, I will hope, will be able to organize, by, hey, this is Stefan Fulton's coursework, and you can go through all of his different courses. It'd be really cool to see that work. That's kind of the best method right now, but hey, maybe UXL will implement some sort of feature where, you can put in your strengths and whatnot and have suggested courses for you. So things that sort of match your background, actually, maybe they do that on the platform already. Either way, that sounds like a really cool feature. I like that. I like that question. If anyone has a platform that they've used to find a mentor, to find someone that they can learn a skill from, and get in real close and get their foot in the door into the industry, whatever industry it is they're looking to get into, definitely add that in the chat. I want to hear some comments on that. That could be pretty darn cool. Here we are. I'm gonna hop into this watch party. Am I actually able? I don't know if I'm able to. Oh yeah, I am. Okay. All right, so we got the comments on the watch party now too. This is wild. There's just comments in too many places. I just realized that Facebook has like live what is that? Closed captioning. It's amazing. It's cool how fast those come up. Get some water in here. Alrighty. So let's see. Last question was by Amia S. That was a great question. I'm really curious to see what some people comment on that. With different finding mentors online can definitely be a challenge, but finding them online and then working with them in person would be super super cool. Having a platform like that that'd be wild. All right, so next question is from Seth Zuck. Do you find it helps your creativity to listen to music while you shoot? It depends how involved I am with the shoot. I've done that before in a couple of shoots. Like there was a shoot where I was working third base cam on a baseball field. So I was this was for video, and I find music and video kind of work really well together. They sort of it gives you that music video effect where things kind of take on the feeling of whatever you're listening to, and that can definitely affect the way that you shoot. So I've done that a couple times with video. When I used to go shoot live music, I sort of used that same feeling, like, oh, okay, like here's the beats, things are gonna happen along with this. When I was shooting video, it didn't have that same connotation because I was the only one that heard the music. Like I would have it in my ear and just sort of be shooting video and know my shots. My producer would be in my other ear going camera 1, camera 3, camera 4, like saying which cameras he's going to. So that was sort of like a personal version of like, okay, like I'm like really in the mode, and it just sort of like helps me with productivity. But when I was shooting bands live, it was always metal bands typically that I was shooting. So they had very, very loud, punchy music. It was really easy to find the beats and follow along with that stuff. So that always gave me some very positive effects because the bands would try and move to the music. They would try and jump and do a kick or like spit water into the air and make this big spray look. So you could sort of follow along to the beat in that situation. So I could see how it would be helpful if you're working with, say, like a model, or working with some people like bands doing some more dynamic headshots. But you would still need to have the ability to direct them. So definitely keep your music within the range that they can still hear you. If you need to go, hey, move your head a little bit like this, or get really good at your nonverbal commands. But I can see how that could be helpful during like a photo shoot in particular. Meanwhile, photo shoots during live concerts, obviously, like it gets easy to follow along with the music, know when they're going to move, and have an idea of where they'll go. So that can totally help there too. But I do like using it when you're on some sort of passive camera, like if you're a videographer or if you're a documentarian and you're sitting out in the field, because I feel that having that music in my ear can help me pay attention more to what I'm doing, because I'm like locked in, I'm in the zone. I don't have all this, extra noise around me. I have something like maybe I know the music that I'm listening to, and that can give me something, comfortable as like white noise in the background that I can sort of pay attention to what I'm doing and forge ahead. So yeah, I do think music and creation just in general, like whether you're making art, whether you're taking photos, whether you're shooting video, there's a very intrinsic link between those things. And I personally like it when I'm creating, but there are some people who find it distracting. So it really comes down to your personal style and your personal preferences. But I kind of like it. I like listening to music when I'm doing a shoot or something like that. Okay. Zaylin Omar has a question here. How do I get smooth skin tones when shooting portraits? Okay, so there's a couple layers to this question, I feel like. And it might be more than what you thought you were asking me, but hey, we're going to go into it. So, smooth skin tones. The first thing that's going to really affect your image is going to be the lighting that you put on your subject. So, you're going to want to make sure that the lights that you're using have a high, TLCI or CRI rating, some sort of measurement that says that, they're of a high rating. Typically, I can tell like if a light has a measurement rating and it's, got a TLCI and a CRI rating, it's at least in that range of, okay, well, they were thinking about, photography standards or videography standards when they were, writing out the information for this light. So, sorry. So if they're at least thinking about photographers and videographers, then I would hope that there would be some color accuracy there. Um, but if you go even further than that, if you find lights that are CRI 97 or above, that's been a good range for me. Like the light that I'm using right now is CRI 97 plus, so it's 97 or higher. Color rendering index, which is basically like I think it's a visual measure, so it's comes down to a panel of judges who look at the rendering index, who look at the performance of the light in like a standardized situation. So it's maybe 5 feet away from a wall at full power. And then they measure the power of the light and the accuracy of the light. But I think it's like a jury kind of method where people vote and say, hey, this one looks good to me, this one doesn't. So depending on how that rating comes out, it can be a little unreliable. But the industry is changing over to different standards and finding ways to measure these things accurately and in objective ways as well. But for now, what we have basically is CRI. And as far as I've seen, anything above 97 CRI is going to be accurate enough. These lights have pretty good accuracy. I don't really have to like correct much in post. In fact, like the Instagram feed is just auto balanced on my my face, and my skin tone looks pretty good. But the next thing that it comes down to is exposure. So you want a high accuracy light, but you also want to have the proper exposure on your skin tones. So if you're shooting video, there's an easy trick. You're using zebras, which is actually, it shows when a portion of your image goes above like 70% exposure, or you can set that to 90 or 100, whatever you really need to do. But it gives you the ability to go, okay, well, I'm going to set my skin tones to just a little bit of 70%, and as soon as the skin tones start to hit 70% exposure, then we're good. And we'll shoot our image there, and our skin tones are going to look nice and smooth. Hopefully they're not going to have any like really peaky spots. Like this spot over here is actually a little bit overexposed, but I didn't really have, the light that I would want to use in that direction that can be far enough away and still affect me without lighting up the entire background. So it's like this whole balance of, well, I just kind of like this light. So I let it overexpose a little bit there just to give some dimension on my my face. But if you're looking to get proper exposure, you want even color. So you want to be able to get color back in the image. So maybe just a little bit less power there would help out. But having that even exposure over the skin tones of the face, or at least having the parts that you want exposed, if you're say doing a shoot that's very shadowy or moody, if the parts that are exposed are just barely hitting that 70%, then you're going to have a proper exposure. With photography, it's a little harder to figure that out. So with digital photography, at least you can take some shots, check your exposure settings, and go from there. But I typically try to go with the lowest ISO settings, stick to around 1/60th to 1/180th, between there in shutter speed. Then you'll get kind of a more natural look. Anything above like 1/200th starts to look like real sharp and jagged, and can kind of give you some weird effects with your lights too, like say if they have a refresh rate or something like that. But you want your lighting to be accurate. You want your lighting to be properly exposed in your camera. You want to have the proper settings with the lowest ISO possible in order to get, nice skin tones. And then you also want to edit this image on either be, very gentle if you're working on an 8-bit screen. You want to shoot raw if possible. You'll be able to do more gentle edits without affecting the, doing destructive edits like to a JPEG where it just changes the whole file. Doing non-destructive edits in a raw gives you a little bit more room to play around and, adjust your exposure and whatnot. But so there's levels to this, and as we get further into the process, that editing on an 8-bit or 10-bit or higher bit rate monitor is going to help avoid any sort of like color effects or like artifacting in your image, where maybe you adjust the saturation too much and you start to see like blown out spots of color or hard edges and whatnot. Like the gradation in the color isn't perfect. If you're using a 10-bit monitor like this ViewSonic that I just got recently, then you'll be able to see that gradation a whole lot better, because your camera, if you're shooting with like a DSLR or a mirrorless body or something like that, anything that's in that prosumer range is probably going to give you a raw image first of all, and it'll also give you shoot, I forgot where I was going with that. It'll give you the ability to control a lot of those settings, so you can set your settings so that's a little bit more easy on skin tones and easy on your face and all that stuff. Oh yeah, that's right. If you're shooting with a DSLR or like a crop sensor or some sort of prosumer camera, it's most likely going to give you 14-bit raw images if you're shooting in RAW, which is a lot of range when it comes to color and whatnot. But if you take that image and you export it as an 8-bit JPEG, but you've messed with the lighting and you've messed with the color and whatnot a little too rough, you might not be able to see it on your computer until it actually gets put out in post. The artifacting and the things going on with that image. So there's kind of a laundry list of things that you can do to make sure that doesn't happen. But if you're going through those first steps, the in-camera stuff, checking your lighting, the color rendering index of your lights, the exposure that you're shooting at, the settings in your camera, that's going to be the first place that you really want to make those changes in order to make it easier on the edit. Buying a 14-bit monitor or 10-bit monitor or whatever, that's kind of the last step that you should take, because you don't have to invest more in order to get your settings right. You do have to invest more in order to get a high bitrate monitor or high color rendering lights, all kinds of things like that. Remember, your highest accuracy light is going to be your sun, basically. It can shift throughout the day, but still, daylight settings, go outside, get some nice shots. If it's cloudy out, it's a nice soft box, things like that. Yeah, so thanks to everyone who's joining us on Instagram. If you have any questions, definitely head over to UXL's YouTube or Facebook page and join us in the chats there. Those pop up in my actual chat feed, which is above on this stream, and you'll show up in the actual side of the live video. So we'll be able to get your questions and you'll be able to see them over on those channels. Over here on Instagram, it's kind of like a separate stream, so we don't have the ability to get those chats in here. But thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching as well. Hopefully you get something out of these questions. We're answering photo, video, media production questions today. The students over at UXL got to pre-register and ask their questions first. So we're going through those, and then any other questions that we have on these streams as well. Cool. Yeah. All right. So it looks like that's doing well. All righty. So we're going to move on to the next question in a second after I get some coffee in my system. Good old coffee and some more water. Okay, so that last question was from Zaylin Omar. Thank you for the question. Actually, Zaylin has the next question too. I just realized. So Zaylin Omar has another question. Zaylin says, is it possible to blend two photos together without using Photoshop? I don't have the money for a subscription right now, but my client needs this done. There are other free editing programs that you can use. There are ways to use, Microsoft Paint to composite images together. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult when it comes to using those programs versus using Photoshop, or maybe a little bit more limited or something like that. Like Photoshop has a lot of methods of doing this. I got water in my mustache. There we go. Better. So Photoshop does have a couple methods of doing this, but there are, if I'm not mistaken, no, that one costs money. I was thinking there was a Photoshop app or a Lightroom app that you could get for free, but I think that those are yeah, I think that those are a little difficult to work with. So if you need to do the photo compositing or some sort of thing like that, like you might be able to use Paint, you might be able to use GIMP, which I think is the free version of Photoshop that comes with Mac, if I'm not mistaken. But there have to be some free versions out there. Let's see, free Photoshop program. So, all right, we've got the top 8 best free Photoshop alternatives that are actually good. This is wpmodula.com. They're free Photoshop alternatives. Comes up as the Google answer. So this is chosen by Google. Let's see. They mentioned GIMP, which works with Mac OS 10.9 Mavericks or later, Linux, and Windows. Okay, so GIMP works with Windows too. GIMP was the top one on the list. There's Paint.net, which is only for Windows. Pixlr X, which is has a web version available. Krita, which also works with Apple, Linux, and Windows. Sumo Paint works with Apple X, works with Apple, Linux, and Windows. There's also Seashore, Pause Pro, and Photo P, which I've actually heard of Photo P before. People have kind of mentioned that one before as a free Photoshop alternative. But James Bass and Ashley mentioned that GIMP is open source. Nice. GIMP is open source, so there's probably a whole lot of support for GIMP in the internet communities. Just Google open source Photoshop alternatives and you'll be able to find one that works for you. Yeah. Okay, cool. Ashley says you can do it with CSS now too. It's not as flexible as using a photo editing program, but it can be done on the web. I think the app is only $5 for Photoshop on the iPad. I think that might be $5 a month. I think it might be subscription based, just because I know that if you have Creative Cloud, then you get those for free. Maybe it is just $5. Who knows? I could probably look that up. Photoshop app. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, yeah. iPad. So this is the Apple Store. Photoshop Express Photo Editor. Free. Cool. Cool. Not bad. Alrighty. I just noticed we have a question over on Instagram. So the question on Instagram was, what is the phone? I'm using a Galaxy S9 to stream the Instagram chat. This is the reverse camera. So I'm seeing you're seeing the face camera. But if you hop over to UXL's YouTube or Facebook account, or hit me up on Facebook as Full Coverage Media Group, you'll be able to see this stream through a Sony a6500, which has 13.5 stops of dynamic range. It is getting, crushed down into web format, but hey, it still looks brilliant. James Bass says, does anyone still use CorelDRAW? Oh wow, I remember that program. That was the big competitor with Photoshop, like Photoshop 7. I think was the big one. CorelDRAW Graphics Suite 2020. Okay, so they're still around. You can get CorelDRAW 2020 Graphics Suite for $34.95. $35, and it looks like it's not subscription based. Sweet. You can get a free trial version. Works for Windows, works for Mac. Cool. Cool. Good on you, Corel. I remember seeing the Corel building when I used to work in Ottawa. They have this beautiful, it's I think it's quartz glass on the outside of their building, and it's like this pink, brilliant, like bronze pink hue. It's gorgeous in the sunset. I gotta look this up now. Corel building sunset. Okay, never mind. It's not as well known as I thought it was. So it's this building in Ottawa. It's just beautiful. Maybe it's not there anymore. Huh. Anyway. Okay, so on to our next question. That was a good one. That was another question from Zaylin Omar. All right, so Richard Aluwatosin Alugunla. Oh, man. I'm sorry about butchering the names. My name has an E with an accent in it, and living in northeastern United States, I've always gotten that butchered. So I apologize. I know how you feel, and I wish that I could get a pronunciation on your name so I could say it right. For a beginner like me, I will be willing to start from the very beginning. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so Richard was just kind of making a statement there. That was cool. He's saying, for a beginner like me, I'll be willing to start from the very beginning, and that's that kind of humility, like walking into something like this, walking into a new a new realm of creativity is a great idea. Because even as you get further into photography, it's one of those things where you start, as you learn how much you don't know. And then as you continue to learn, you add things to your things that I know pile. But there's always, these little random things that pop up every now and then. People will be like, hey, have you heard about 360 photography? Or have you heard of 3D photography? Or like, the Lytro light field cameras. And you're like, what? And you learn that there's more things that you don't know. So learning is all about learning more things, yes, but also learning more about what you don't know. Because a lot of times we walk into these fields thinking that like, oh, it's this way and it's going to be super easy. But as long as you have that willingness to learn and that humility of saying like, hey, I'm a beginner. What do I do? Hey, who's got suggestions? Like, being open to criticism like that, instruction, that's huge. So Richard, you got the right idea. I'm glad to hear that you're ready to start from the very beginning. Next question. Actually, this is the last question. This is going to be the last question of the UXL, pre-roll questions for the photography series. Geez, my heart. So Cynthia O'Brien asks, what post-processing programs do you use or recommend? Okay, so post-processing programs that I use for photos in particular, I use Adobe Bridge to organize my photos. I get to rate them, say, all right, these are my 4-star photos, these are my 5-star photos. Typically I actually just go through and do 1 stars for, okay, these are the ones that I like, and then I go and I organize by 1 star so I can look through all of those images again and say these are the best of those images, and then really pick out the ones that I want, or go through them and give them a 3rd star and say, hey, these are the best ones, but I need to do edits on these. So these are actually going to have to go into Photoshop. A lot of the images that I do edit, I just use the Camera Raw editor. So that's exposure, that's, there's a bunch of settings in there that you can use. They all use the Camera Raw data of that image when you're shooting in RAW. So you get a little bit more latitude when it comes to changing your white balance or changing your exposure. You can do a lot to play with those images. So that's the editor that I typically use. But if I need to go further than that, like if I need to composite the image, or if I need to do some like filters, or anytime I'm adding layers, I'm going to have to go into Photoshop. I use the Adobe Creative Suite just because I use a bunch of programs on a regular basis. I'll use like my toolbar currently has Bridge, Prelude, Premiere Pro, After Effects, Audition, Photoshop, and then what is this, Media Encoder. They all just got like kind of an update in their tiles, but I always have those installed on my computer. That's one of the first programs that I put onto any computer that I own. Um, in fact, my laptop has the entire suite on it as well. So it's definitely a robust system. I love using it, but it is expensive. It's something like $50 a month, if I'm not mistaken. It might be around like $60 a month, but you get access to all their programs, all of their creative suite programs. Did you know that Adobe has a marketing suite as well? So they have tons and tons of programs that kind of handle this creative production and then creative delivery. So it can be a really helpful suite to like get to know and be comfortable with, just because it is pretty industry standard. When it comes to video, I still run into Avid a whole lot, and I'm not a huge fan of Avid, but I do know that Avid is very robust as a system. It's a video editing system, but the barrier to entry is really high. Like, you have to get typically trained on it in order to be able to really use the program effectively. So I prefer to use Adobe, just because there's tons and tons and tons of literature and media out there about how to use it. There's Adobe has their own professionals program where they do like regular videos and how-tos and tutorials. There's just lots and lots of documentation out there to help you work with Adobe programs and figure them out. So yeah, you can get one program for $20 a month. Ashley says, I've always found it more valuable just because I'm using multiple programs. Like, I'll use multiple programs in a single day. I probably use all of them within the course of a week. Like all of the 5 or 10 that I have installed. But you can get a single program for about $20. So if you're going to be using multiple programs, it is really cost effective to do the full subscription, just because a single program for $20 or all of them for like 40, 50, or for like 50, 60 is a pretty good deal. But again, there's tons and tons of editing programs out there, but we're actually going to kind of get into some of the effects that I've used in editing and in camera, to sort of liven up my photos a little bit and do some interesting edits. So Photoshop is what I use for those. So we'll be able to go into those a little bit. All right, so we can finally get into our actual subject matter. We have the Instagram chat still, which is pretty cool. We've been rolling for just about an hour, probably a little bit less. I was a little late today, so got started a little bit later than expected. But we're talking about innovating as a photographer. This is the final step in our little journey of how to be a better photographer. We talked about starting with the basics and how to use the cameras that you have with you better. So cell phones, how to use small cameras and basic settings and what the settings mean. We went through, how to upgrade your gear cost effectively, how to upgrade your gear for the long term, how to get clients, how to bridge the gap from being an enthusiast into being a professional and being a freelancer. And now we're all the way up into advanced editing techniques, developing your own styles of photography, and using new technology to your advantage and stay up to date as well. So the first kind of topic is developing new styles. And I have some examples of work that I had done back when I was a photographer that I think was particularly creative stuff. Some of it was paid work that I got hired to do. Some of it was, just like me asking for models and going out and being like, hey, let's do some time for print stuff. I've got some experimenting I want to do, or like testing out new gear, things like that. So I'll get this tab tree up over here. Okay, so we were just talking about Photoshop. Let's see. What is the... I thought there was a full screen, but maybe it was Alt-Enter? Nope. That's not full screen. I don't know what the button is. So, whatever. We're just going to deal with it like this. Okay. Go over here, and we'll get you screenshot. Okay, cool. So, this is on my Stay Heavy Studios page. We're going through some of the photos that I did back in the day. So, like, this was actually a relatively recent photo shoot. It was within the last year. And this is with a model that I've worked with before. from the area. Her name's Vanessa Estefania, and she's did some really cool work that day. Like we did some shots in the river. We did some shots like on a rock nearby. We added some lights in. We shot it up on a bridge. She had this brilliant giant hat. Like it was really cool. We had a lot of fun. And then she kind of brought out, hey, like I've got some kind of witchy stuff that I want to add like a witchy vibe to this. Let's do something cool. And I'm like, all right. So we waited until a little bit closer to sunset. It was still actually light outside for these images. So obviously I composited the background because I couldn't have gotten, a long exposure like that and actually get, like a meteor shower while getting this sort of an image. They just wouldn't work together in the same sort of way. So I just sort of added it in as like an element like that, but you can see there's still a tree in the background. There's still some, stuff here. This might be a little too dark to see on the actual stream, but I assure you, if you go to Stay Heavy Studios on Facebook, you can find these images. They're all public. You can check through these photo shoots and whatnot. There's some cool stuff there. So this one in particular, there's a also, if you're on Instagram, if you want to see these things that we're looking at, go over to YouTube or Facebook. You'll be able to see it there. We usually don't get this far without the Instagram chat dying and the stream shutting down. There's a limit of 1 hour on these, so we're only going to have a couple more minutes to hang out and chat. If you do want to watch more of this, though, definitely go over to UXL's Facebook or YouTube channels or Full Coverage Media Group on Facebook. I would love to see you there. I'd love to see your questions in the chats. Cool. Okay, so yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, this is just a simple photo composite. So you bring this into Photoshop and you're cutting out one image wherever you want it to go. You're making your selection. There's tons of tutorials out there on making selections of different ways to do that sort of thing. And then you're going to overlay it into your background. You're going to try and grade them a little similar so they look like they're the same sort of exposure values and whatnot. That way they'll fit right, and all that consists of is adding those adjustment layers. Like if you're in Photoshop, all you're going to do is add an adjustment layer, curves or something, and adjust your exposure and the look of your layers so that they match as well as you can get them. So this is that same shoot. Here's another setup with the same table. Instead, we're doing a portrait style and really trying to elongate her figure and her frame in this. I really like the shape of this. I thought it was really cool that she was wearing such dark stuff on a dark background, but it still showed up because we got that sort of reflection using the lighting that we were using. You get a little bit of reflection on her top, a little bit of reflection on her pants. Really, it was just a cool photo shoot in general. I really enjoyed being able to use like practical stuff like this, like the candles, and sort of mess with that a little bit more. Here's another photo shoot. This is with a friend of mine from around the Philly area. Her name was Summer Tompkins. She does some great work. She's in all kinds of different types of media. But here we're doing an experiment with RGB lighting. So none of these colors are actually affected in post. The only thing, there is something that's been done in post, and I wonder if you can kind of pick it out. It was a little thing to help kind of liven up the image, and I think it made a really big difference, actually. So here I've got a light just behind her in the background over here that's facing towards the wall. It's blasting it with red light. But then we have blue light coming in through the window, and that's actually not RGB at all. That's actually just daylight balanced light. So this light here is much more, there's a color that we had to shift to, and the only real like edits that I did, there were two little changes that I made. The one photo edit was to shift the color balance so that the daylight was going to look really blue. So I'm shifting that white balance bar all the way blue, taking out a lot of orange from this thing and leaving it really blue in the daylight areas here. The other thing that I did was just copy this little light mark in her eye, because there's one light over here, and put it over in this eye. Actually, I might have even done that the opposite way. Oh no, the image is getting smaller. That's not what's supposed to happen. Okay, yeah, so I forget which one I moved it to, but I definitely moved one light to one of the others. There, well, there goes Instagram. I was gonna say, a little goodbye to Instagram. Ciao Bella, but I guess that's it. So we're gonna share that to IGTV. That's already got our title on there. Sure, that's a pretty face. Okay, let's go ahead and post that. Cool. All right, so now we're back. I can focus on you guys finally. Alrighty, so this image, it was, very, very light editing, but those changes really made a big difference. It turned the background more red, it got the daylight much more blue, and then it got that second catch light in her eyes to really make the image pop. And I don't know, I like kind of moody shoots like this. I think there's a lot of cool things that you can do, but using those very same lights in that very same position, you can get things like this. So like I ended up, actually, I think I moved the one little light that was causing the catch lights to the other side. So there was another light over here. We had our colored light in the background shooting red and pink up onto the wall. I wanted this shot to look very tropical, very, happy and bright, warm. And I think we definitely achieved that. The red glow around her shoulders really mixed well. She has a darker skin tone, and it really mixed well with her skin tone as well. She has this very, very warm look to her, so it worked perfectly. And then with the clothing that she was wearing, we could still, I still basically had to keep the white balance. So it was a lot of in-camera work to get this image right. You can see here the shadow falls off under her chin this direction, so we have one light over here. This one is definitely shooting more orange. It's going to be an indoor balanced light. And then we're balanced for daylight. And then over here, we have our red light shooting up against the wall. So you can see it's a lot, you can see the difference between the saturation of the red, much more magenta in this image, and much more saturated, versus this one, which is much more gentle kind of grade. So these are some, very simple little things that you can add to your images, little ways to affect them that give them that advanced edit sort of look. There are things that you just wouldn't be able to see with the human eye because you can't add in an extra catch light just in an unnatural spot. You can't, throw up RGB with your brain. Other things that you can do to start getting creative and start getting into your own styles of photography is looking for different vantage points. This goes along with my, here we are. There's a bullet point that I wanted to talk about. There it is. Okay, so developing new styles. Those first shots with Summer and with Vanessa were more falls more under our advanced editing type of things. So those are little subtle edits that you can do to spice up your images, sky replacement, color shifting, and knowing how to balance your lights so that you can do those color shifts. But when it comes to developing a new style of photography or working in new styles of photography, finding different vantage points can be really, really inspiring. Trying to remember what the situation was. I had just gotten a lens for a gig. I had this really long zoom lens that I wanted to make use of. I think it was oh dear, what was it? Was it a 210 millimeter or... No, that might have been back with my my Nikon. So I could have been shooting with a 350, a Nikon 350. And yeah, I was up in a building. We had rented an Airbnb, a friend of mine, to go do some model shoots, and I wanted to test these longer zoom lenses out. So obviously we can't do that in an Airbnb. That's 2 rooms. We were doing other types of photos there anyway. We didn't want to use like super telephotos. But I brought those along so I could test them from the balcony. And up there, you could get some really, really cool shots. So couples talking, people in the streets. I always wonder what they were chatting about. I was really looking for textures because at the time I would use these textures to create Photoshop brushes and overlays, grunge stuff. But every now and then I would find someone just walking in the right position or whatever and have to snap a shot. So using those different perspectives, you can find some really, really cool subject matter. I always wonder what this guy's doing. Is he lighting a cigarette? Is he texting someone? Why is he turned at that odd angle? Is the wind blowing out his lighter? Like, what's going on? Is he writing himself a note? Maybe he's writing a poem. Who knows? It's just kind of interesting, and it gives you a different perspective from where you typically see people. So if you can get out of those normal zones and those normal headspaces where you find yourself, it's going to change your perspective, whether actually changing your perspective or just giving you a different way to look at the same subject matter, or the same events or whatever it is. Hopefully it'll give you a little boost in your imagery, a little boost in your creativity and whatnot. Cool. Okay, so next, this is along with advanced photo editing. So this is a fun technique that I used to use a little bit. So I would add like a little bit of grunge to an image and use these ink blot or splatter brushes to create a background. So this is an artist. His artist name is Negro Mambo Lucas. And he does like this, I don't know, he does like salsa and merengue style music, and it's just like the rhythm is so great. So he came into the studio at one point. I was working out of King Studios in Allentown at the time. So he actually came into King Studios and we did a shoot in one of their live rooms. I wanted to make some images, he was saying, on a completely white background. So I set up a backdrop as best I could. I lit it to the best of my abilities and got some good images. But I actually ended up not getting the backdrop done as perfectly as I would have liked. So I had to composite him out of the image. So I went around and literally fine-tuned, selected all the way around the image and made sure that he was cut out perfectly, to the point where I could, even his little elbow and under his hand is all cut out, so that I can place him on an artificially white background. But that also means that we lose the shadows that are there. So I tried to follow the direction of the light that I'm seeing here, which is a little bit above and a little bit behind him, as well as one up in front. So we're getting a little bit light on this side, as well as a little bit of shadow under the underneath here, and it sort of fits with the image. It makes it look just that much more realistic, as opposed to having his feet just dangling in space. That looks really, really weird. It can really take the the credibility out of your image. But then, just to add a little spice, I did some grunge brushes, added some cool kind of textures and whatnot above that, and then used the liquify tool to stretch them into different patterns and just sort of experiment and see what I could get. So this is some abstract art just behind a portrait, and I think that's a really cool way to make some unique photos and unique portraits. This was a different photo shoot I did with a friend of mine from Ontario. Her name's Emma. She is a model up there, and she does all kinds of different mediums as well. This shoot, I think the biggest thing that we did to make it a new style for us was we wanted to do a model shoot with like the classic little black dress, something that looked a little bit more classy, but in a very different environment. So I had these ideas for doing portraits of men in full three-piece business suits, but like under a bridge with like debris, or like on a broken car or something like that, like on a burned out shell of a vehicle. Just something to make it different from the standard portrait photography. So we ended up at this place, and I put the light down really low. You can see the light is literally sitting on the ground. So it's casting this big giant shadow up behind her. You can't really see it in this image, but later on you will. And she's actually barefoot in this place. It was one of those things where we went around, we swept things off. We tried to get as much, like any dangerous debris out of the way. So we did check through the environment first, but we just kind of went in there and shot what we could and tried to do our best with getting dramatic images in a low light situation with hard lighting, in an environment where you normally wouldn't even do that type of shoot. And I loved the effects that this space had. Like, we really got some interesting images, and it was a lot of fun during that shoot too. We both got to adventure to an abandoned place. I did get permission from the owner to use this spot. It was someone local where we were shooting out of at the time, and it just tons and tons of fun. you get a hike in and out too. So that was always cool. This is, I think that skipped the one that I wanted to show. Okay, well then there's another one in this series that kind of shows the shadow a little bit. So here's in color. You can do all kinds of things. Those last ones I was messing around with post color. So I like this one a lot just because her face is obscured. It's, it's very mysterious and dramatic and whatnot. But there's some other ones that show a little bit more of the wall behind. So that's, no, okay, let's go this direction. Yeah, like this one as well. This is another favorite of mine from the set. It's a little like messy and chaotic, but it's kind of cool just because there's like one eye peeking out at you. Things like that can get really dramatic. So here you can see the lighting that we're working with. There's one little tiny light on the ground, firing all the way up and across, and really making for some dramatic shadows there. It was a lot of fun. It was a little tiny light panel. To get a more dramatic effect, what I would do is bring one of these Cobb LED lights. So I think there's one on the table behind me. Like one of these. I actually just modded it, so I took the filters and the lensing off of this thing. This is the Well-Making Well-Making HL400. So this one's a oh, it had a little bit of juice in it. That was funny. They take NPF batteries, but they're Cobb lights. This is I think a 40-watt Cobb light, so it's pretty powerful. Got some serious juice to it. Yeah, I got some batteries back there. Give me 1 second. So if I had done something differently with that shoot, what I would have done is bring a light that has a stronger point, like this guy. I guess this light's battery's dead. Unless I just destroyed my light. Nope. Okay. So let's pop this battery off. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So as you can see, this light is very, very sharp. And it's going to cast very sharp shadows. The reason why that light does that is because it's a very small single point of, like, you can see that yellow ring kind of in the center there. It's a single point light. It's called a chip on board light. And when you have a smaller point of light, it's going to give you sharper shadows. The wider your light is, the more diffused it's going to be. So those panels and those larger LED panels are not going to have that same effect. It's going to give you a more it's either going to give you the effect of like a whole bunch of little shadows getting darker and darker and darker until you're actually in shadow as your light rolls off, because the panels have a bunch of tiny little beads in there. So you'll see the difference, the shadows cast by this bead versus this bead because of the different angle at which they're hitting you. But these Cobb lights have very small, like single diode LEDs. They're very, very powerful. So you get a whole lot of light. It's very sharp light, and you can do some things with it. Like her shadow would be very, very crisp and sharp edges because it's a much smaller point of light that's creating the shadow. So that's some cool ways that you can mess with lighting and all kinds of things like that to really step up your photography and to make it very unique. Not a lot of people would venture into an abandoned house and get on their knees for a photo like this. Like, she's barefoot too. It's like this, she was really giving it her all. It definitely took some collaboration between the both of us to get this stuff done. And I'm happy that we got to do, some crazy stuff like that. Another image out here, definitely a weird perspective. I think I was lying on my back on the ground for this one. I think I'm shooting with about a 10 millimeter like a 10 millimeter lens, which is super wide. There we do. Okay, so yeah, shooting with an extremely wide lens. I'm on my back. I've got this camera shot right directly into the air. And it's yeah, it's just a wild image. I messed with the color balance, obviously. Um, but the main thing that I did was actually select her out of this image. So you select along the edges here as best as you can, because you're working with, you know, hair and trees and everything's a little bit in focus. So it can be definitely difficult to get that right. There's also lens flares coming through the image. But selecting around there and then just do a color shift on the entire background. I moved, I think, the cyan and magenta wheel, bars just to different positions and kind of messed around with it until I had some stuff that I liked. And I think that there's a couple of these. So this is the actual lighting from the image. Blue sky, yellow trees. This is what I changed it to. I think we have a couple like that in this shoot. Yeah, so I think this one was affected a little bit. Yeah, so just a couple different colors. Messing with those colors can really make for some different images. You know, this was just kind of a striking spot that just had a whole bunch of very straight trees. Beautiful orange fall day. We decided to go out and take some shots. Yeah, so finding cool places like that, finding interesting vantage points, that's all very important when it comes to standing out as a photographer. Here we are. All right. And now here's where we come into a different kind of discussion. So I'm using lights back here that project a certain color. I just realized my thing went off. Where's my lava lamp? Oh, might be time for a new light for the lava lamp. Perfect timing, just in time for the. It lasted right through the series. Okay, so the lights behind me are projecting light onto the screen, onto the wall. So it's a blue LED diode that's projecting blue light. When you do that, you can obviously get some like really intense saturation in your images, and sometimes that can look a little bit like crispy or crunchy and just not look good. It's overexposing the saturation of that color. When you're shooting an 8-bit or 10-bit video, even sometimes you can get that. 14-bit photos, you don't really get that quite as much, but there's a way to mitigate that even more, is using a daylight balanced LED diode to project daylight balanced light through a colored filter. So this shoot was, this is with some of my friends from the 13th floor, which is a band in Ottawa, where I was messing around with two 500-watt incandescent softboxes. So we got incandescent light coming through a softbox. Or actually, no, you know what? I think I got daylight balanced bulbs. Anyway, it's a balanced light, so it's either daylight or incandescent that's projecting their already balanced light, so I can balance to that color, and then you can put gels over top of it, and those gels have very specific like shifts in hue that they'll do to your daylight or incandescent balanced bulbs. I believe daylight is the way to go, and I think I went with daylight on these too, but who knows? These are Westcott soft boxes, 500 watts. The nice thing about them is you get a lot less saturation in your colors. They're much more pleasant on skin tones. They're much more easy and easy to work with and expose for. It's just an all-around better way to do this. So this is my friend Jaquan Park. He's in some sweet dynamic lighting right here, and I just really like this image because it was a cool way to sort of use that blue and red to really get people to stand up off their background. And then I actually, like, if you notice here, the red on this side is hitting his face, but it's red on the background behind him. And the blue that's hitting him on this side is blue on the background behind him because you're getting the cross of the lights. So I was really messing around with a setup to try and make it look like there's opposite lights on one person as there are in the background, and use those highly contrasting colors of red and blue to make them stand out even more. Oh yeah, and of course, we got Dante here. This is Buddy's Buddy's dog Dante. This is Liam from Ottawa. He's a friend of ours. He's drummer in a couple of bands, and him and Jaquan were living together in this house for a while. Not sure if they're still there, but either way, got some great shots of Dante. Gotta love the doggo photos. Much love for doggos always. This is a great photo shoot. Dante, he's just so easy to work with. And the great catch lights in his eyes worked out really well. He was super interested in the colored lights. He kept looking at them like, whoa, what's that? That one's red? Oh, that one's blue. But as a dog, he'd be colorblind, right? So maybe he didn't even see red or blue. He just saw like different shades of gray, maybe? I don't know. Wild. Anyway, that's Dante. I need some water. Okay. All right, so here's another image. Would love to know how you got these. Awesome. Well, if you're watching this video, then you're going to know how I got these. All right, so lightning is really, really fun to photograph. Lightning works like its own shutter. So this was actually like, if you look at this image and you go, okay, there's water droplets that are frozen in the air. There's real crisp images. The water, you can see all the ripples in the water down here. This must be a really high shutter speed image. I think this image is actually, I think it was set to 30-second exposure, but it was also set at like F10 or F15, F16 or something like that. Like a really, really, really deep depth of field, a really high aperture value, which means very little light is going to come through. But when you're exposing for 30 seconds, there's a lot of light that's going to come through that image when you're typically shooting at 1/60th of a second or something like that. So setting your shutter speed a little bit higher and your f value, so your aperture is very, very small. You can set your camera up on a tripod, hit it with the remote shutter, and simply wait for lightning to happen. Lightning strikes, and then all of a sudden you'll get like a shutter-like response. The interesting thing is, I think this is 1, 2, and then 3 lightning bolts. It might even be 4 that are striking in relatively the same place. I think there's a lightning rod out there that are striking in relatively, close places, and that's why it's so overexposed over here. I have, I think, another image where it's sort of the same thing. See, this one, you can see the light on the water. I think there was a light inside the house was showing up a little bit too much. You can also see there's crap on my lens here because I was shooting at such a high f-stop. When you're shooting at like f20 or, f16 or something like that, all the dust on your lens starts to show up. So you have to have super clean lenses. But here you can see the trails of the water falling through the air. But on this one, it's a lot less apparent. The water looks very, very sharp and very, frozen. So it can be a really cool technique to mess with long exposure and lightning. There's also cool things that you can do with portraits and lightning. Say you do a flash portrait of someone and then they get out of the way and then there's lightning that happens in the background. The lightning will be striking through the people. It's really cool effects that you can do with, a front curtain flash or a rear curtain flash and long exposure. Or also, just having a flash unit so that you can go and like manually pop a couple shots off with that light. All right, so Ashley says, dogs have a sense of color. It's just more muddled than our color vision. I don't think they see red at all. It's just a blue, yellow, gray scale. Interesting. Okay, so like he probably would have seen the the really strong blue light. That's why he was looking at the blue light. Like here, if we go back to that image, right, y'all. Dante's actually looking directly at the blue light. Maybe he was more interested in that one because he could see the color. That's cool. Ashley also says, that's a really cool photo. We should print stuff like that and hang it up in the house. Thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe. I might be able to just recreate some new things. Here's, okay, so this is the developing new styles and a little bit of the using new tech kind of part of this chat. So in terms of new tech, this was a photo shoot that I went to that I was told I was allowed to use flash photography. There were other photographers that were going to be using flashes, and hey, we're just going to go for it. It was going to be a crush night. It was sold out. It was going to be a ton of fun over at Mavericks in Ottawa. So this is Adrian Fittipaldi's, the lead vocalist of the band Northlane, back when I saw them. They have a new vocalist now, but you can kind of see there's like some weird ghosting. Like there's, you know, looks like the guitarist's arm, or maybe actually I think this is Adrian's arm up above him. So there's Adrian here. He's obviously, you know, in focus. He's holding the microphone. He's holding it out for someone who's screaming his line out for him. Everyone's going nuts at the show. But then up above, you see this ghost image of Adrian. And what that actually is, you can see there's a flash here that doesn't have a camera attached to it. It's actually coming from this guy's arm. What I was doing was using a remote flash unit. So I had a wireless commander here on my camera, and then I would have this little macro flash unit, which is a ring with two little wireless flash units on it. I would hold that out to the side. I would typically use that hand. So I'd hold this out to the side and kind of next to people, and then I'd take a photo, and it would go off. But I'd take a photo, the flash would go off, and it would be like a like 1/3 of a second, 1/6 of a second exposure. So I'd take that photo, and then I'd go whoop, and I'd roll the camera in my hand. So like I'll kind of show you what it would do. So here's the camera. You're holding this in your hand. You take your photo. You hold your thing up. You take your photo. You do your shot. Boom, and then you twist the camera. Sometimes I would go boom and then twist it like that, or sometimes I would even like try and hold the camera like upside down or just in a really awkward position so I could take the shot and give it a whole bunch of spin afterwards. And that's where you get these lines. So your initial flash will freeze the action. So this is the action that was frozen. This is the initial shot of mine. So this happens first. And then as I twist the camera, I apparently twisted it like this direction. It's going to show up like this. So I twisted it like this because this part of the image is dragging down. So this was the part of the camera that went actually twisted up like that. It's opposite as I'm seeing. Anyway, so yeah, you twist the camera and you get these trails of any light source that appears. So there's these lights up here. You can see all three of them trailing downwards. There's apparently some sort of light source over here that trailed in the spin. Caught a bit of it up in the top corner here. But then someone in the background was using another camera. You can see right down here. So one of these flashes, I'm not sure which one, they probably popped off two different flashes. And you can see my my f-stop is at like F8. Whenever you get those star flashes, that's why that is. Because you have... your f-stop is up pretty high. F8, F10, F16, you'll get really nice star, light patterns like that. So one of these flashes caught Adrian after he stood up and started walking over this way. Because he basically stepped over me in this photo. So you see sort of the image of Adrian rising above him. And I just always thought that this style was really, really cool. And it always felt very unique. Because I was adding those spins and doing long exposures and adding that remote flash to give dimension to people. It always felt very unique to me, and it felt like art more so than just taking the photo that I was supposed to be taking. I could be quietly snapping photos at the back of the crowd with an f1.4 lens or something like that, or a longer focal length, whatever. But I always wanted to be in there in the action. And I wanted to get, very sharp, very frozen motion images, but that also translate motion. It's hard to do that without, you know, getting just blurry shots to translate motion, to, you know, have someone kicking their leg up in the air and you actually see the motion blur of that leg. To do it in this method, I think composited a couple things of like what I wanted, and what I was hoping to see in other photography. Here's another shot, that same exact style, and this one I probably whipped more to the side. But this is, I think, that same night. Mark Akubo, this is Danny Hauser. These are the members of Veil of Maya. This is back when Brandon Butler was their vocalist. And this iteration of the band was just so amazing. Like, they crushed it, absolutely. Guy up in the front is just so sweaty. He's trying to stay alive as the audience crushes him from behind. It was a wild night and just, you know, a great time. But experimenting with photo techniques like this at shows can be hugely rewarding. Here's another one. This is, let's see, I think this is Spencer McLean from maybe Structure. No, that wasn't Structures at the time. This might have been an opener. But anyway, this kind of really cool shot. Obviously overexposed in the hair, but because Nick Zorafas. I think this is one of the local bands up in Ottawa. So this is another night. We're all playing. You can see the drummer in the background. We got another, I think, bassist there, and guitarist over here. Buddy's leaning right into the camera, just puts his face right into mine, looks me in the eye, and I get this shot. And I always thought this was a really cool image. Yeah, using that effect, it's hard to know exactly what you're gonna get. If you're using that front curtain, you can get that first shot, but then it's really just, you know, whatever happens afterwards. I think I flipped the camera over like this. So I took the shot, boom, and then flipped it over like that, because you can see a bit of guitar or bass over here, and I think that might be this instrument that literally just went whoop and flipped underneath like that. So yeah, we got a couple more that I wanted to kind of talk through, and a couple more points. So here's an image. I just really liked the way that these trails came out off of his head and sort of hid behind his shoulder. It looked almost like photoshopped in for some reason. So sometimes you get some things that really work out. This is Texas in July. Their vocalist, I forget his name, but yeah, it was a hell of a show. Here's another one here. This is back with North Lane again. This is Adrian Fittipaldi's again. Everyone in the crowd, you can see everyone's way up close. They're just loving the show. Everything's sharp. Flashes and using light to your advantage can be really, really interesting. Especially like just flash. Using constant light like this, I wouldn't be able to do most of the things that I was doing in this. You would just have blur everywhere. But using an individual single flash to just freeze your action can be highly rewarding. Here's another one. This is Intervals. So this is oh dear, Lucas Gaeter. Yeah, okay. And there's Aaron Marshall from Intervals. This is way back in the day. This is, I think, their second album. They're up now to like 5 or so. Here's Aaron Marshall playing. This is a photo that I really liked. Something happened with the lighting, and I wasn't really sure what it was. I think Jerry here, I think he stepped into like a spotlight that may have been like green or something like that. Like, I think there was a balance issue where like he was in one color lighting and everyone else was looking normal. But you know, hey, they can all look yellow for all I care. Jerry's the one that's the focus of this shot. This is Jerry Roush, ex-vocalist of Sky Eats Airplane in let's see, you were in Glass Cloud in this. Yeah, Glass Cloud. So he's playing with Glass Cloud during this show. We opened up for them that night and had just a wild show. I was exhausted already after having played a show, but man, I needed to get photos of this. Here's some friends of ours jumping up and just loving it. And this shot actually got into AP magazine. So it was in one of those, you know, best vocalists of I think it was 2017, 2018, something like that. And I saw this in there. This was shared on Instagram. I think Jerry shared it on his Instagram. And I think that's where they got the image too. So it was really cool to see an image like this using this crazy technique that I had been kind of messing around with for a couple months now actually go somewhere. There's another one with Marky Kubo. Just, it's almost, I think that's the same shot that we had up before. I just apparently love that shot so much that I decided I had to show it twice. Looks so nice, you show it twice. Here's another one. This is Brandon Butler. This is Danny Hauser, the bassist of Veil. He's got a 7-string bass. He's whipping his hair around. His hair made this whole like swoosh thing. And I started kind of messing around with that effect a little bit more later on. There's some other bands that I did that sort of stuff with, where if they had longer hair, I would really accentuate that with the the type of settings that I was using. And finally, this is an interesting style of photo composite. So you can do kind of like a dual image like this, and then use filters like your opacity filters, such as difference or exclusion, to make some really weird images. But I like this one a lot. I had messed around with this photo shoot for a while to try and get some some cool images out of it, and to get some different images from edits that I had already done. And this is what I ended up coming up with. It was this very kind of surfer vibe feel to it. I don't know, something felt very like vaporwave about it, and I just enjoyed that style and liked doing that shoot. So yeah, that's those are the images that I wanted to show off. Some that sort of exemplified the different points that we had on our list today. If I can see if I can get those up. Here we go. Okay, so different points on the list. Developing new styles. So changing your perspective, trying different locations, messing around with putting two different styles together. So like doing like grunge photo shoots, but with like a high fashion looking model. Could be really, really interesting. Doing live music photo shoots, but using a small flash and a long exposure during, and shooting at f8 during a concert is a little different from how things are normally done. But if you can find the right venue that allows you to do flash photography, you're great. You've got a new way to do things to stand out from the group. Next, using new tech. A couple of those sort of exemplified that. The live music shots, I was using the Nikon R1C1 flash kit. I think that's been discontinued like a long time ago. That was like 8 years old. I sold one to Dan's Camera City, so they might have one over there if you look for one. But you can get some really interesting effects with that. There's other remote flashes that you can use now. They can probably be really powerful, but this thing was small enough that I could take it with me, and I really wouldn't get like turned away at venues, which is really important if you're trying to get live music photos. So using new tech is very important. There's always new stuff coming out, so staying on top of the game and even just researching what's out there. Keeping your eye out for new videos on YouTube about gear and technology. Looking out on Amazon for new things. B&H Photo has what's new, or you can actually go to the category that you're interested in say it's photography equipment. You can go to like DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, and you can search by newest. So using that feature will let you see the newest things that have come out most recently, things that are available for pre-order, stuff like that. And that'll help you kind of stay on that bleeding edge. Pay attention to YouTubers that do gear reviews. If you want to see what's new, what's going to be coming out. If you're thinking about buying a camera, maybe watch some videos on what's coming up soon. That way, if you really like to, you can get ahead of everyone and get on that like bleeding edge. Finally, advanced editing. That was all kinds of like photo composites and blending new backgrounds, adding different sky replacements, adding grunge to your images, painting digital backgrounds, keying or selecting out people or parts of images to composite with other things. These are all really important techniques that there's tons of media on, and it really depends on what you're trying to do with each image. So even on an image by image basis, you can literally go through and be like, this would look really cool as a dual exposure. So let's try and edit this as a dual exposure. Let's see what we can do. Find a YouTube video, find a tutorial, and go through that little course. Take the 10 minutes to sort of figure it out. Follow along as you're doing it, and all of a sudden you've got a new skill under your belt. You've got a new way that you know, okay, if I take a photo like this, then I can use it for this purpose in post. It's the whole shooting for your edit is something that I learned as a videographer more so than as a photographer, but it definitely applies in this situation. So that's basically all I had, lined up for this chat. We have a chat from Stephanie. She says, "You're such a smarty pants, so talented." Oh yeah, of course. I got my smart ass side from your side of the family, of course. It's great to see you on the chats. Thank you for joining in and watching. Yeah, so that seems to be all the questions for today. This is going to be the last in the photo series, How to Be a Better Photographer with FCMG_stay. We will be doing more stuff sponsored with UXL soon. I'm thinking in the next at least 2 weeks, though, we're going to be gathering material from what we've already shot. We're going to be editing it and putting it up in different ways. So there's going to be some highlight videos showing up on both mine and UXL's accounts, as well as some Instagram media coming out and some other ways to sort of advertise this. In addition, I'm also going to be doing some changing of this format. So either the way in which I present the material, maybe the way in which I light my background, the position that I'm doing it in, and maybe I have pre-recorded examples to come up. But the next segment will be all about how to be a better videographer. And we're going to start again with the very simplest parts of it. So whatever camera you have with you, all the way up to, how to put on that matte box and make that image look way better. How to, use vintage glass to improve your camera on a budget. How to adapt new glass and, when to buy, when not to buy, when to upgrade, when to wait. Things like that we'll be covering throughout that course. And we hope that you're here to join us for that. It's been really great having the feedback on this one so far, but I would love it if you went over to Facebook, fullcoveragemiagroup.com, and left me a message with your thoughts on how I could improve this stream, how we can integrate more of your chats. Let's see. Ashley says, you should include editing tutorials with Premiere. Yeah, at some point, we're definitely going to have some stuff like that in there. The editing tutorials and whatnot are going to be going up on the Full Coverage Media Group YouTube and Facebook pages. I'll be doing a lot of content like that in the tutorial and the gear review kind of vein of things. And I think I'm going to be adding in some cool little short film snippets in those reviews. So I'm really excited to have you over there. Definitely come and join me if you want to follow some stuff there. As always, feel free to message me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on wherever else you can find me as FCMG_stay. I'm always here to answer your chats, or even just, chat with you about media stuff. Wanderer says, this series is awesome. Even though I don't have gadgets and can't afford them, I still enjoyed thoroughly. Wanderer Fakir, it's so great to have you in these chats. I really appreciate you being here for these. Everyone can learn from this series. Thanks, Stefan. Anytime. Honestly, if you ever have any questions about photo stuff, feel free to send me a message. I would love to chat with you. Love to get in touch with people and connect with more of you. So in the meantime, if you want to see us do some streaming, I'll be streaming again on Twitch at FCMG_stay. We'll be doing some gaming there. We'll be doing some adventures. That'll be happening over the next couple weeks as well. But we will be back with UXL within the next, month or two. So keep an eye out for that stream. We'll be advertising it, a little bit differently this time, but hopefully we'll have you back. Wanderer, thanks for watching. Stephanie, Ashley, James Bass, Scott Westgate was in there. We had Steve Husted, Husted. I don't know why I said it that way. I apologize. Everyone was joining in today. We had we had some other chats. We had I can't scroll that far back. but we had other people. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm going to leave it on that end screen, and we'll be back again soon with some more material. So don't go too far. You're all the best. Love you tons. Peace.